It's the 4th of July weekend, a weekend across the United States where we celebrate our freedom, our independence, and we also say thank you to the men and women who made that possible and continue to do so every day. And so with this event right here, the Freedom 100, here live on Green Flag TV at the virtual Talladega Superspeedway, we're going to continue to do that by supporting Mission 22. Hello everyone, my name is Derrick Watson, next to Finn Acini, and welcome in here as Dustin Ollis is pressing the buttons behind the booth, making us look and sound good here for the Freedom 100. Well, Finn, here we are, 4th of July weekend, NASCAR, Super Speedway racing. Maybe not something that happens in real life nowadays, but for a long time, a tradition. Maybe a different Super Speedway, but it feels just kind of like natural to say 4th of July, NASCAR, and Super Speedways.
It does feel supernatural, one might say, to have super speedways and the red, white, and blue of the July 4th weekend and our celebration of our American history and the history that is so ingrained in the culture of NASCAR. It feels very quintessential, like it would be, fits right at home. And while we don't see it anymore in real life, we can celebrate it all the same in iRacing.
All the same. That's what we're going to celebrate tonight as the men and drivers of the Freedom 100 are going to celebrate and honor Mission 22, an incredible charity we'll talk about throughout the night. We've been raising money all week with the entry fees. You can still donate as this race goes on. A QR code will pop up at the top right of your screen with a PayPal link right there. It is in the middle of your screen, in fact. Continue to donate. Finn, last update I got, already over $1,300 raised from this event alone for Mission 22.
And that, I feel like, is a fantastic number we should try to smash and see how much more we can give to them and the fantastic work they do to help veterans with all sorts of post-service, really, related injuries, issues with mental health, and all sorts of things in between that as they transition out of the military and get into the civilian life.
Yeah, and at some point throughout the night, we'll show a video promoting Mission 22 and what they do so you can get a feeling for what that charity does. But welcome in here to the Blazing Pedals qualifying event. You'll see different drivers going up this track. And as is typical tradition, Finn, that first lap all the way up against the wall, you want to wind up this engine as high as possible, as fast as possible, as quick as possible. In that second lane, you'll come down. So here's Paul Satmary. And Paul, by the way, the German of the field. He is called himself that during the pre-race show that the drivers did for themselves earlier. He's the one German entrant, very proud of that, and wanted to be a part of this event the same. Paul races this ARCA car every Monday night in the High Tide Racing League here on Green Flag TV. And Finn, there he is, basically up against the wall, about as close as you could get without actually touching it.
And as you, I believe, come out of the fourth corner here, you'll eventually work your way down to that start-finish line in that bend before turn one. And very fantastic to have people from all over the world to help celebrate our history. And I'm super thrilled to see what he brings. But
yeah,
I would say there's also such a huge Euro NASCAR movement out there that we don't see a lot of here in America just because we're so focused on real NASCAR. But there is people that love NASCAR all across the globe.
Indeed there is. So here's Paul now. As Finn indicated, it's going to come down, going to track to the yellow line. That's the out of bounds line. And then he'll begin his actual, what we call the hot lap, right? That lap right there, just one to kind of get started. You see the lap time there at 55.517. He'll crush that. Now, right now on the board, the first driver is Paul. So he has the fastest lap by default, but see right there, already went away. Stephen Blevins to the pole, Austin Norris up top, Daniel Jackson. So all these drivers qualifying single car on a track by themselves, but doing it all at the same time here. So let's see what Paul can do as he comes back around to turn 3.
And this time around, turn 3, not going that high line. I believe he's just going to stick low as he can get without crossing that yellow line, the double yellow line, I should say, to really minimize the amount of track racing speed or distance he has to go around.
Yeah, that yellow line, not necessarily out of bounds in qualifying, but it will just unsettle the car, get you wicked loose, and really kill that run. So Paul comes around here. Let's see what he does. Time-wise, it should be better. It's going to be better. Let's see how much better. It's going to be about half a second faster. That'll put Paul on the board here and put him up in P7, as right now Brad Lawson holds the pole. This is the car that won the paint scheme contest. The drivers and viewers of the pre-show broadcast voted on his car, Finn. I like it. It shows off the patriot feeling. It shows off the homage to the military, but in a subtle way, in its own little way.
And it's also, I think, very tasteful. It doesn't, fully use a specific camo as the only kind of hallmark piece of that livery. I think it's, like you said, very tasteful. The inclusion, of the camo, but also the homage to various military units as well, with the emblem on the front, which I believe, where's that track from? Comes from somewhere. Excuse me. I thought I had it off the top of my head, and I do not.
We'll come back to that. John Perkins here on track. Now, in this race, we were discussing in our own kind of pre-broadcast meeting, this race is going to be a bit of a tradition, or a showcase is the word I want, for different races here on Green Flag TV. And we'll try to show some of them to you as we come across them. John Perkins races Thursday nights on the Average Joe's Sim Racing League. You find that here on Green Flag TV every Thursday night. On myself on the call, and Christian Hill pressing the buttons on back. Steve Blevins, another Average Joe's racer, has secured the pole for now at a 54.930. Oh, no, it's been taken by Steve Loving, actually. So it just moved again. So Steve Loving now on the pole. He's from Premier Sim Racing on Wednesday nights.
Yeah, Premier Sim Racing. I believe you call that one as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Derrick.
with Evan Soko.
Yeah, so with Evan Soko, that is a fantastic group. We get to experience some of the love that you guys get there over the beer league shortly after y'all, but so most of those drivers we see there aren't ones we see on the Wednesday night racing that you guys have over at Premier Sim Expo.
Yeah, and here we go. Mr. Green Flag TV in a certain way. Dalton Kill races Saturdays, Sundays, and Mondays on the channel. Part of Sim Racing Association, part of the Blazing Pedals, which typically airs most Sunday nights. Myself, Justin Prince on the call. And then Dalton Kilroy, one of the admins and drivers of the High Tide Racing League on Mondays. Dalton's going to come around here. This looks to be his second lap, maybe a little higher than I would think for a second lap here, Finn. But watch him get back down to the yellow line. And remember, science teaches us the fastest way around is the shortest way around the circle.
It around the circles of ovals, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, road course is a whole new problem.
I'd say as soon as you have to add in a right, and maybe there's a difference in speed where you get more speed even though you're going a little bit further, it's a whole different ballgame. But we're talking about lefts, not rights.
Yep, that's very true. Dalton finishes that second lap. Wait for the time. Looks like it's going to be a 55.046, and that's going to put him 9th on the board as we get through qualifying. About 3.5-ish minutes left here. Now Brian Cook from Average Joe Sim Racing. There's one of those red, white, and blue paint schemes. Very patriotic with the blue base, the white stars, a little bit of red stripes up the top and around the sides, and the black numbering. So this would be easy to spot if you were the spotter for Brian. Maybe that number not so spottable. The black letters, or the black letters, the black numbers on the side of the car. Easy for me to say, but from a paint scheme standpoint, as a spotter, you would love that look. Here's Mark Arthur. Mark also repping a new paint scheme here, because sometimes Mark will race his Barbie paint scheme in the ARCA cars on the channel in both Saturdays and Sunday action, but Mark going the more subtle look here for the Marines.
Yeah, I'd say really honoring kind of the dress blue look there with that red blood stripe on the bottom of it. I'm going to give you a little bit of Marine Corps knowledge for that one. And complete with the white top of that car representing, kind of assume, the white cover or hat that the Marines wear in their dress uniform, or the dress blue uniforms, I should say. As he comes around the start-finish line to come complete a lap, or start, I believe his first flyer based on how high he's running.
This will be the first one, yeah. So he'll get the second lap in here. This will be the one where I would think we'll try to cut down. That was a long lap for the first one, 1 minute lap here. We'll see if he pulls off here. I mean, you should know this, the look of this car and the intent of it. Yourself being a former Marine, if you don't know the look of this car, they're gonna come get you.
They would come get me, and that is very true. One thing I don't talk about a whole ton in the broadcasting space, but that is the truth. That is a part of the background that I come from as a mere corporal of Marines at one point in my life.
Well, I thought that was his first lap, but you're right. With the way he's holding the top of this line again, I would suspect this may actually be right here his first lap, because he has not moved off of that top, one of the smoother lines here. This will be his first official lap time through qualifying with about a minute and a half left. He'll definitely complete it here before time is up. Only a few drivers not to have turned a time. Tanner Marr, Mark Miller, Mark Arthur is turning one here. Trevor Harmon, Kyle Wellman, Larry Bell, and Jamin Bernhardt. We'll see if any of those guys get lap times in. Here's Arthur to the bottom.
Yeah, and he's really, feathering that throttle, coming in and out of 4. Okay. And he's cruising down that final stretch before the bend and the start-finish line shortly after that at Talladega. Difference than some of the other super speedways that have this bend where they put it right in the middle, right?
Yeah, of course, Talladega, you're right, has the start-finish line about a few hundred yards later after the tri-oval. So a much different race sometimes than it is at Daytona, which is where you'll find some of the official racing on iRacing this week. And Mark Arthur is going to come on around. Let's see if he can get to the line faster. A 55.652 the first time, a 55.017 the second time. That's good enough for 4th on the board. But come back to your point, you're right. Start-finish lines after the tri-oval, so you could race through there and then try to make that last-ditch effort compared to. Here's Kyle Wellman. This is another one of the more muted colored cars. Still has that patriotic look. Still got the star in the front. Kind of the, I don't know if it's meant to be that. I call it the Navy ship gray as a base color.
I mean, it's also like the old, very much feels reminiscent of the old B-17 bombers that were that aluminum color because they just never got painted in World War II. So I feel like you just brought me on here to pull all the military knowledge that I have out of my head for this broadcast, and I'm here for it. So.
Well, I think it is time to reveal the winner of the Harman Motorsports Pole Award as we take a look at tonight's official Freedom 100 starting grid. That pole award from Harman Motorsports goes to Steve Loving in the number 27 car, and he's going to have Brad Lawson to the inside, the number 2, who the paint scheme winner. We talked about him earlier. Back in P3, you'll find Richard Regan Jr. from Premier Sim Racing. He'll be next to Mark Arthur in the number 12 car in the Marine look you talked about earlier. Up top is 5 to Stephen Blevins in the 51. And he's got Chris Carroll from Blazing Pedals on the inside. Scotty Stevens United was one of those bomber cars, the number 2 car up top with John Perkins on the inside in P8. P9 belongs to Reese Bogue in the 04. Got the stint analyzer red, white, and blue out there next to Dalton Kilroe back in P10, Finn.
In P11, it's going to be Kyle Wellman, another one of those bomber or really 1940s era warplanes alongside Austin Norris in that Blue Angels, another, very different era liveried car there. Joshua Holt in 13th alongside Ben Hollum in that Xbox liveried car there. P15, James Efa alongside Brandon Metler, in P16. 17th, Paul Sathmary and Brian Cook. Daniel Jackson, 19th. Chris Mackey in 20th. Round out that top 20 for you, Derrick.
We've been back in to find Cody Gibson, number 7 car in P21. P22, Thomas Freitas, the number 999, that very American flag looking car. The 23 is Steve Linger. Will hang back there in P23 in row 12 next to Thomas Stevens in the 05 in that Hendrick Cars machine. M. Brian Matthews up in the 28 car next to the number 29 car of Trevor Harmon. Kind of cool they lined up 28, 29 right there on the grid. You'll find the 78 car of Jay Rushing or Jason Rushing. He's the admin of the Average Joe's Sim Racing League. He's next to Tanner Marr, one of the organizers of tonight's event, the number 4 car. You got Jamin Bernhardt of the 48 in the old Jimmy Johnson machine next to Larry Bell in P30. And then rounding out your field in 31st is Mark Miller and at number 8 with the black American flag look. And that's a look top to bottom at tonight's Freedom 100 starting grid. Well, here we go, Finn. Lining up for that long pace lap at Daytona. Once again, congrats to the pole award winner of Steve Loving. He's going to win that TNN Motorsports Freedom 100 pole award. I'm going to give it thanks to him, as well as give thanks to our other sponsors this evening. We're going to show them on the screen here in just a moment. Maybe we won't. You'll see them up top. There is TNN Motorsports in the top right of your screen. And then you'll have Blazing Pedals League cycle through there and a couple others. I want to thank everyone who sponsored and donated. All proceeds tonight going to Mission 22. Well, Finn, I was going to say a second ago, here it is. It's Talladega. You kind of get butterflies, right? Everybody wants to win here. This is one of those quintessential oval tracks. It's like winning it, I don't know, it's like winning at Le Mans, winning at Daytona Road Course, winning at Sebring. When you grow up an oval nerd and an oval fan, this is one of those places on your checklist.
It certainly is, and it's far less of a checklist that I think I hold now as an adult. As a kid, I loved NASCAR growing up with my father, so I'm very familiar with how much it means for someone to win at Talladega. It's, like you said, right up there alongside Daytona, some of the other big name ones, the Coke 600 at Charlotte as another big name, big ticket, I would say, to get your stamp of I have climbed that mountain. And as they get ready to round out that formation lap here and get underway here in a moment.
Well, very fitting that the iRacing pace car also in its own red, white, and blue scheme is eventually going to make the left-hand turn down pit road. The start of this race will be on the green flag. Steve Loving leads the field on around. Once again, thank you to the men and women who served and do serve this country. Let's honor them and have fun by racing Talladega in the Freedom 100. And the green flag is out, and we are go, go, go. Well, up front for the first few lines, it's the leader. Maybe second place is clear. That's going to be Richard Regan Jr., and it's 2 by 2, about 5-6 lanes deep here as we now begin lap number 2 here of this event. 100 laps around the Talladega Superspeedway. Here it is. It's Loving being pushed by Regan. Drivers familiar with one another due to racing the same league on Wednesday nights. Behind them, Brad Lawson, Stephen Blevins, Mark Arthur, and Scotty Stevens running at your top 6. But here comes the top line, Finn.
Yeah, top line being run with Brad Lawson at the helm of that, trying to look to get the nose out in front of Steve Loving. Managed to do it so far, but they have a little bit more ground to cover than they do on the inside, so it'll be interesting to see if they can hold this pace going out of turns number 3 and 4 here, back on the start-finish stretch.
Lawson is clear if he wanted to make the move. It's obvious he wants to stick with Arthur, but Arthur does not. Arthur looked to make it 3 wide and backed out of it. Now Lawson's not sure what to do. Boy, Arthur is moving around to start the third lap here. I thought we were about to see our first hint at the front of 3 wide. We saw it earlier in the back of the race there, but boy, Arthur got back in line. Lawson could pull down anytime he wanted to. I thought he was committed to Arthur and vice versa, but we'll wait and see if that works out here. Pretty calm. There's your first hint of 3 wide up in the back of the field, and not of impact yet. But boy, that top lane, Finn, look at that 1, 2, maybe 3 cars clear already here on the bottom lane.
Yeah, they've got really good pace. I think Mark and Brad have kind of figured out what they're doing. You know, that really initial kind of unnerved, one wasn't sure if Brad was going to change lanes, so Mark kind of was making his own decision. And that lane change is looking likely now. But I think Mark's going to try to follow him down, and this top lane is going to turn into the bottom lane here in a moment.
Now we're turning into 3 or 4 lanes. There's that 57 car. He kind of got pushed to the middle and then got back in line. But, boy, this bottom lane is all discombobulated. They can't stay in line. There's a lot of weaving, a lot of bobbing, a lot of checking up. The leader of that lane is Ben Holloman, that Xbox car. I guess what's more American than Xbox, I guess, if you're Ben Holloman from that point of view, right?
Yeah, I'd say Ben Holland, if that's the most patriotic thing is Xbox, then that's the most patriotic thing. But
there you go.
It is, I'd say,
look.
Definitely a different look. I'd say the most green car I think I see out here, which isn't a bad thing. It's definitely its own vibe by comparison to the red, white, and blue and the more dull, muted metal tones we see in a lot of these cars.
Yeah, I guess if you're a spotter, you might be happy about Ben's car, right? Because you're like, hey, I know that car. That's mine. I can pick that out, right? There's 3 or 4 of those bomber-inspired cars in the field, a bunch of red, white, and blues, and there's Ben and the green Xbox ARCA cars. So coming around the bottom here, getting pushed by the 57, and seeing if he can make his way towards the front. Ben been pretty patient here, but boy, it's just about strength in numbers. It's about patience. It's about staying in line, and that's what that top lane is now 4, maybe 5 cars clear.
Yeah, I'd say just that staying in line, really leveraging the draft, a little bit of bump drafting from Mark on those straightaways, but making sure not to do it in the corners, because while these are a little more friendly than our previous Gen Arcas, I'm still pretty sure that they aren't super kind with the bump draft outside of when you have a perfect line to just give them a nice little shunt forward.
Yeah, that's probably a fair statement, right? You can do it a little bit more, but I wouldn't want to lean on it like you do with the trucks maybe, or the Gen 7 next-gen cars. Here's actually a pack in the back of the field, by the way. This pack is kind of laying back. They're hoping to find something happen, or maybe they're thinking something will happen and we can avoid it. This is back 24th on back. Chris Mackey, Brian Cook, Tanner Marr, Jamie Bernhardt, Larry Bell, Dalton Kiro, Trevor Harmon. Finn, this feels purposeful and organized. When you're 5-6 cars in a row that far back from the leader, this doesn't feel like an accident.
I'm not sure it's an accident, or I'm not sure if it's just these are all the guys that saw the 3 wide on lap 1, wanted to not be a part of whatever wreck that happened in front of them, and ended up pulling out and making a little bit of distance there. So I think it is purposeful at this point, but I think it was in the effort to not get caught up in something. As we see number 28, Brian Matthews, going from the outside over to the inside, trying to find a way to kind of clamber up the ladder, so to speak, as these 2x2 rows just keep having great pace here. The bottom row now pulling away from the top row.
Yeah, now it's even back up. I remember we talked about it earlier. I think a couple cars have moved down towards the front. We'll go back there in a minute, but here's Brian Matthews on board, one of those red, white, and blue schemes with the big D in the middle of the car. So this number 28 car back in 23rd. You see the estimated throttle inputs. I'm going to point those out just because they're estimates based upon the speed. I mean, you see right there a full throttle, but sometimes it goes to 0. That's probably not a full 0 throttle. We get those estimates based upon the RPMs we get from the cars and the speed, but I doubt he's going all the way down in speed, but those are estimates. The speed is good. The RPMs are good. iRacing does not feed us the throttle inputs, so we're kind of making some estimates and some guesses and some guesstimations on that. But here we are now through the field. Ben Hollum still leading up front. By the way, Ben's painter is in the YouTube chat, says, quote, Ben did not tell me this was a themed patriotic event. So he made Ben a car and did not get the info. So party foul on Ben Hollum for leaving out the important details. But here we are now working 3 wide.
Almost 4 wide as these cars got a little bit loose up at the front, and the individuals, Brad and Mark, kind of got disconnected there for a moment, and that has gotten Ben Hollum and his not quite correctly themed paint the run there to keep up with the top line as the top line kind of reorganizes, shuffles through, and Chris Carroll, who was at the lead of the bottom line, got kind of shoved into the middle and dragged down in that kind of vacuum that gets created in between the draft packs.
Great run so far by all cars. Even in the moments when things get separated, those 3 and 4 wide moments get tense on track, but the drivers are staying safe and being patient and making it happen. Let's keep a couple things in mind for this race tonight, Finn. 1 fast repair available in the pit stalls. 1 quick repair if something does happen to your car tonight. So everyone gets one re-entry would be a nice way to say into this race. I mean, so possibly, down some spots or what have you, but 1 entry possible. Still 4 cars ahead on the top lane. That's Lawson, Arthur, Perkins, and Mettler, by the way, who is up 12 spots on the day. That 4th car in line up top, already up plus 12 in that red, white, and blue scheme. And there you see right there on the bottom, these are your hard chargers. There is a hard charger award to hand out at the end of the day for the most spots gained. And right now, that would go, I believe, to Thomas Stevens.
I would have to agree. Up 13 positions for Thomas Stevens at his current spot. Kind of hanging out in this 3rd row, a little off to the high side of the, what we call the top lane at the moment, which is maybe becoming the middle lane, as both him as well as Scotty Stevens
Yep, and the 2.
And the 2 there, both kind of right in that high line and trying to keep out of trouble. Chris Carroll coming down on Ben Holland there as the top group get really disorganized.
Lots of checking up in the field, lots of lifting, no one wanting to make contact, no one wanting to be the cause of the first caution here. We're already into double digits. Lap 11 is where we are. Talladega Superspeedway, Freedom 100. Here comes Holland charging to the inside. Now up to the second car in lane, getting a push from the 57. That 57 is Austin Norris. Norris trying hard to make that push. We're looking towards the middle field, but up front, look at this. Here they come. Now it's Holland up even with that Marines car of Mark Arthur trying to keep up with Ben Holland. If Holland maybe gets one more push out of 4, Finn, maybe he's up to the lead.
I think it's possible. I think Austin Norris having a really good job staying with Ben Holland in that Mission 22 Blue Angels liveried paint. There's a bunch of the paints here that have the Mission 22 logos floating around with them as part of the sponsorship of those cars, fictionalized, I presume, as we are donating so much charity to them as a result. And the amount of money that we've raised to help support veterans, I don't think can ever be overstated.
No, mental health, an important topic for anyone, but especially for the servicemen and women who endure things that the average person may never quite just understand or fathom or be able to relate to. But here, no, look at, there's a little move up top. There's one of those old B-57 bombers you pointed out, and that's the 2 car up top, I do believe. We'll have a hard time maybe picking those out tonight from a distance. That is the 2 car. Briefly thought about it, and then went ahead and got back in line, so we're still too wide at the end of lap 12.
Yeah, Chris Carroll diving down to the bottom line. Ben Holland going to end up looking to give Chris a push to help keep up this momentum here. For that bottom line, Scott D. Stevens as well as Thomas Stevens, both kind of hanging out at the tail end of that top group of cars.
Let's see how good of a pusher Ben is, and we'll see if he can get the Chris Carroll and others to the front here. Now, let's keep in mind a couple things about this race. These fuel tanks, by the way, limit to 75% gas. So we will probably, I would guess, see pit stops in the late 20s of lap numbers versus maybe the 30, 35. You might go in the ARCA cars at a normal pace. We'll keep an eye on that as the race goes on. That'll keep pit road active. It'll keep a number of pit stops a little higher. And we'll see if that matters at all. Ben Holland trying to close up to Chris Carroll. There's the bump. And gets a nice bump in. And boy, they're just having a hard time in that bottom lane, aren't they?
They are. I wouldn't say that the top lane is faring too much better, because every time I think I see them start to pull away is when a little bit of shakeup happens between Brad and Mark at the beginning, and John Perkins, who's been hanging out right behind them in that kind of third position in that column, ends up having kind of the similar kind of checkup. So it's, I think, just a matter of time before we'll see the bottom column, or bottom row, rein them all in, unless they make that dive down as they just have.
Yeah, now you see it's pretty evened up here, and now some of those cars are up top, as you said, have moved down. Now they want to control the bottom lane. This could be an indication. It's a little early, but it could be an indication of practice for pulling down lanes later when you do want to pit, because obviously you want to pit from the bottom lane and not the top. So here again, let's look at your top 5. It's Lawson, Arthur, Perkins, Carroll, and Ben Holland now in the top 5, and that car on the bottom. So Holland getting ready to go on around. We're coming up here on a couple cars that are about to be a lap down. This is going to be the first of them here. And this is going to be that car we saw towards the back of the field here, Finn. The number 8 car.
Started.
That's Mark Miller.
Yeah, Mark Miller started from the back, and I think just has been trying to play the fuel game as well as just kind of getting a feel for the car a little bit more than I think the rest of the pack, and has kind of, without the help of the draft, which I think is crucial in the lap times we're seeing out of most of the field here, has found himself getting rapidly approached by the single line field that is making its way around the King to the start-finish line.
But boy, the scary note, if you are the lap car, potentially lap car of Mark Miller, is how wide they are behind the leaders. Now look at them. They're 2, 3 wide as they're coming around here. So if you're Mark Miller, where do you go? He's going to stay on the bottom. It looks like this is where they need him to be. Here's what's the difference between, or the similarity between oval and road racing. Be predictable as a lap car. He was on the bottom. No need to move. There'll be 2, 3, 4 wide passing him by.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, boy, this is tense. As an oval driver, I've been there before, I can tell you. But so
tense
far,
as a
so
good
good. Now, the good news for Mark Miller is he's going to be the only car a lap down. So if a caution were to come out, he'll get that lucky dog and go back to the lead lap. But for now, he needs to survive. But see, now he's got the kind of problem. There's cars all around. There's in front, behind, side by side, 4 wide. Boy, for Mark Miller, this is not a comfortable spot.
It is not a comfortable spot indeed, especially as he's kind of starting to get some of the draft of the cars in front of him. They have a number
right
5.
behind him. That's going to be a wreck. Caution. Caution number 1. Oh, boy. Cody Gibson, Thomas Stevens involved.
Yeah.
I think only maybe a 2-car wreck. The question's going to be, and I want to see a replay, did they tap the 8 car? Here's why it's important, Finn. If they tap the 8 car and he's deemed to be at even an incident in the caution, he forfeits the lucky dog. So we'll have to wait and see if he got any in contact out of that. I don't think so. Let's watch it again here.
Yeah, looking at the replay here, you'll see Tom Stevens just kind of get turned over the nose of that number 7 and pushed up into the barrier along with him as they get pushed from behind. I don't see them making contact with the number 8, and the number 8 looking pretty clean after that. The front end of the 52 behind those two as well, looking a little bit crunched, but otherwise a smaller incident than what we could have seen.
Yeah, very much smaller. Of course, remember, everyone in this race gets 1 fast repair, 1 free car in the garage you can use at your leisure. So we'll wait and see if those cars who just wrecked maybe have to use it or want to use it. Here, this is the view from the 8. Oh boy. Close. Only counts on horseshoes and hand grenades. Good news for the 8, because close was well, that was close.
Yeah, it was incredibly close, but I believe keeps it alive. Oh, and
let's keep an eye on the 8 here, see if he does get the lucky dog. I'll keep an eye on that, but
yeah, the rest of the field getting bunched up. It's always super scary when you watch cars around you crash. That is the number 5 from that incident, and I would have to imagine that pit stop is going to see that fast repair, refresh that front end, and put that bumper back on.
Yeah, we'll wait and see. Maybe towing back to pit road so the pit stop hasn't happened yet. We'll wait and see. Pit stops are going to happen here. By the way, everyone was pretty close to the fuel window, so why not stop here? Brad Lawson leads them in for, well, at least gas. How many tires? It's a super speedway. Who knows? Some maybe 2 tires, some maybe no tires, both. The 05 is decided not to use that fast repair, by the way, off of pit road. And there he goes in the front of your window. But here comes pit roads, and he's going to get busy, Finn.
It certainly is. Most of these drivers look like they are taking a couple tires or just fuel as they pop up on one side, and sometimes they pop up on the other. But I don't believe there's a set number of tires they can or have to use, or are only able to use. So I think it'll just be whatever they feel.
We are limited, actually, so that's good. We didn't talk about this pre-race, and I kind of forgot. We are limited to 5 sets of tires total, the ones you start with plus 4 more. So that's plenty of tires for a 100-lap race, especially at a super speedway when we don't want to use them.
Yeah, I'd say that definitely maybe is just a let's grab, the 2 tires on one side or 4 tires on if they feel like they have the need for it.
Well, we're going to wait and see what happens here. This looks to be like the lucky dog was granted to the 8. He'll need to wait until they get to... No, actually, maybe he's going to take the wave by. Had he gotten the lucky dog, he would have already gotten the difference here, Finn, in the 2. The lucky dog means you go around and you're allowed to pit at this time. The wave by means you stay out, sort of what they do like an IMSA or a WEC where you are kind of ahead of the leader. You can go around at 1 to go and catch the field, but you're not allowed to pit. So the problem with the 8 here is going to be that unless this thing cautions super quickly, he's going to be out of gas.
Yeah, that is, I think, going to be unfortunate. We saw Tom Stevens not pit in or not take the repair after, I believe, towing to pit lane, pop back out, pops back into pit lane, and gets that repair done.
There you go. So he must have decided after all, probably wanted to take the car out, see how it would drive, if it would drive, and then went, hey, you know what? Maybe I should go ahead and take the fast repair. So unfortunately for him, he's no more fast repairs if anything else happens. So he'll probably drive more cautiously. Coming around here, they should be 1 to go this time by. And the 8 car will get that wave around and get back on the lead lap here. So that's Mark Miller, but probably not that far away from being out of gas. Well, Finn, overall, I mean, 15, 16 laps of good green action here. Lots of 2 wide, lots of 3 wide racing. It showed what could happen here with these drivers.
That it certainly did. I think plenty of good racing as all of them get kind of bunched up and getting ready back to go green. We saw how clean it can be. I think we'll see more of it probably when we get back under green here for at least a little while. If our metrics are to go off of, if we have another good 15 to 20 laps of good racing, we'll see maybe only a couple more cautions before the end of this race.
So a couple penalties are going to pop up on the top of your screen as we get things lined up. The 5 car was tagged for exiting a closed pit. The 05, pardon me. So that was from his trips down pit road. So he'll move to the back end of the line. You know what? If you're out of a fast repairs, maybe not the worst penalty ever, actually. Just kind of sit in the back, wait till lap 80, lap 90, and start racing. End of line might be okay for him.
Yeah, I think it would.
So we'll wait and see here how this comes around and who does what. We're going to go green at the beginning of the lap at 21. It's going to be Arthur, Lawson, Carroll, Perkins, and Satmar, your top 5. So this time it'll be on the leader. Once they reach that Geico restart zone, Finn, the leader can punch the throttle and we'll go green flag racing.
Yeah, so once they reach that kind of blue banner on the inside of the corner in the bend, if I remember correctly, that is where they're set to go green. And I'm super excited to see what lines are going to form up and where if the draft buddies of Brad Lawson and Mark Arthur get back into working to try to keep the field behind them, or if they're suddenly fighting each other for the lead of the race.
Well, here we are, lap 21, Freedom 100, celebrating the men and women of the service by supporting Mission 22. Has Brad Lawson and Mark Arthur on the front line. And you see them getting ready to go in that Geico restart zone. Watch for the blue paint on the bottom of the track. Right there it is. And green flag is back out on lap 21. Well, here it is. Now let's see who gets the better line if they find a way to coordinate it. Arthur with the massive jump on the inside in that Marines car gets caught back up by Carroll. Meanwhile, it's Lawson and others on the top side. Let's see who runs the better line. You see him lined up pretty much 2 deep, pretty far back, 5, 6 cars deep here. And Finn, that 97 is trying to push Mark Arthur on around.
Yeah, 97, Chris Carroll. And Lawson dives in front of Mark Arthur to retake that kind of drafting buddies that they had before. As we get around to, I believe, a pretty special lap 22, if I'm not mistaken, Derrick.
Yeah, we're going to do that. What we hit for Mission 22, supporting the men and women of the military with different costs and needs they may have. It's only appropriate. We take lap 22 and make it a silent lap in honor of Mission 22. Brad Lawson, John Perkins, Mark Arthur, and more lead us around as we lay out and support lap 22. That was lap 22 of the Freedom 100. Brad Lawson comes out of it, the leader. Has a good push from behind by Mark Arthur. Finn, we've seen these 2 guys locked up so far. These guys used to race with one another throughout the weekend races, whether it be the Blazing Pedals League, whether it be High Tide Racing League. When you have a friend at a super speedway, it's a good calming feeling.
It super is. Somebody that you're at least, you understand where they're going to be at any given moment when, you're going to see them accelerate and kind of give that little draft, that bump draft, and knowing how they maneuver because you spent a lot of time watching either seeing them in the rearview mirror or being in front of them and watching them from the inverse position that we see these two in, it's definitely at least a little bit of grounding to kind of put yourself in the fight of method to keep the fight going forward.
Meanwhile, up in the top lane again is starting to show some dominance. It's Chris Carroll, John Perkins, and others up top. This is the 8 car, by the way, so he did have to pit under green. Remember, he stayed out, got that wave around, and this is live. I believe he's just about to get lapped again. He took that risk, Finn, hoping that it would work out. Maybe he's thinking the long game of fuel stops. If this thing were to go green the rest of the way, this is going to get hairy. Oh, boy, Brad Lawson got wiggled loose because of the bump from Mark Arthur, and that 8 car is in the way.
That 8 car is now right in the path of that low line, trying to get around. Mark Arthur kind of trying to keep the door open for Brad Lawson, but unfortunately having to try to get past him because he has nowhere else to be and doesn't want to create a bit of traffic that ends up slowing down the group of cars. So that number 8 there is a little bit more of a problem than it is a solution. 3 wide behind him as they get back into turn number 1.
Well, luckily for now, some of them have gotten around him. You see Lawson, Arthur, and others went up top. Now they're 3 wide on back. You're right about that. This is the track, luckily, where maybe it's still nervous to be 3 wide, but compared to Daytona, it's a little wider, a little easier on the 3. But there's someone over the bottom. Is that the 8? I think pulling out a line
that is
finally.
8, yes. Yep.
He's decided he's just going to fall back and be out of the way here.
Say it was a hard place for him to try to pull out of the way going into that corner without having to slow down a lot more than I think he was intending to. And, as lap traffic, trying to be predictable, you just go, I'm going to be in this lane. The unfortunate part is even if you're lap traffic and you're going a little bit slower, it still is on the cars trying to pass you to get around safely without causing a wreck.
New leader this time by Chris Carroll leads that now middle lane as they come on through. Ben Holland's leading the bottom lane. One of those bomber cars, I think, I believe the 2 car up top leading that top lane. Now we're 3 wide, closer to the front of the lead here. They're pushing around Talladega. Here's an onboard ride. This is what it feels like in the draft, Finn. Cars around you, cars in front of you, cars behind you. And at this point, you are landlocked if you're Paul Satmary.
You are landlocked. You are just kind of stuck riding the wave of cars around you. This is a very anxiety-giving feeling for somebody who is a road course driver. And seeing, lap 1, this makes sense. We're on lap 26. And I'm like, there are too many cars around these people right now. But that's the name of the game in Oval.
It really is the name of the game, especially in super speedway racing. You see it happening here. Now the bottom lane is more prevalent. Now Chris Carroll has taken the lead to the bottom. He's got himself. He's got Ben Holland in second. Got Steven Linger all the way up to P3. Linger up 20 spots on the night. And Brian Matthews on behind in P4 up 21 spots on the night. So lots of big movers in this field already. Some drivers who maybe made some pit calls, some strategy calls, trying to make it work out. We're glad you're here with us on a Sunday night, July the 6th, Independence Day weekend on Green Flag TV. Want to say hello to everyone out in the YouTube chat. We got Sad Lemon, Lori Lyle, Constance Keith is out there, Jen Richards. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for chatting with us. Thank you for keeping the chat entertaining and rooting on your favorite drivers. There's another car now going a lap down. So now that 8 car has competition, this now will be a little more interesting.
That is
that's
Thomas
05.
Stevens. Yes, that's the 05 that got wrecked out in the first caution. And in the process of trying to get unlapped, ended up leaving the closed pits, having that black flag, and is now 3 laps down this time.
You're correct. So not a competition for the Lucky Dog because it would be the first car 1 lap down. That would still be the 8. But the 05 did a great job. Got to the top. And that's a preference, Finn. As a driver, everyone has a preference on where you want lapped cars to be. As a driver, I prefer you go to the top. I prefer you kind of get out of the way. That bottom lane makes the whole rest of the field kind of serpentine around you. When you go up top, we just kind of squeeze in and hug a little close, be a little closer for cuddle before we get around you.
That's very true. I do think with the way that those lines were currently set up at the time that they caught Mark Miller, there was not a way for him to be up in the top lane from where he was when he went into the corner. Chris Carroll moving up to that top line to give a little bit of a run to the John Perkins. Ben Holland still carrying that low line through. All sorts of cars floating around. And I feel like Chris Carroll, Ben Holland are 2 that have been drafting, I think, as well most of this race. Mark Arthur and Brad Lawson a little bit further back, also still in drafting buddy status in a reversed pattern than where they were when they were leading the race a few laps ago.
Yeah, so we'll see how well they do. Holland, of course, in that green Xbox car on the bottom, trying to make that bottom lane work. I mean, he has been, I almost say stubborn, Finn, about sticking to that bottom lane. It's been a while since he's seen Holland up top. He's convinced he wants to make this bottom lane work. He's probably convinced it can. He's got the 23 behind him. The problem is every time that happens right there in that bottom lane, every time someone pulls out a lane, it kills the momentum. Look at that top lane now, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 cars ahead. That draft line got killed when that car pulled out of the way there.
Yeah, that draft line getting killed. I think Ben Holland just has a very big preference on where he wants to be. And like you said, maybe a little stubborn in how he wants to go about it. But is sticking to his guns. And I think when the draft line picks him back up, they'll make their way back up to the front here. That 23.
Stephen Linger.
Yeah, Stephen Linger, who was one of the kind of early, one of the pit stop winners, only 9 seconds in the box, made it to where he had a great, fantastic run there. It's up 14 positions from where he started. If they can all keep that locked up, it's very possible we'll see them come back into, one might say, contention or passing the top line for the lead.
Indeed we will. Well, here it is now, working in lap 31. Coming about 1/3 of the way through this race. And you see Chris Carroll up here leading. Carroll, a member of the Blazing Pedals League that airs most Sunday nights here on Green Flag TV, won a race not too long ago and took a couple weeks off, now back with us here for this charity event. By the way, Finn, as of Green Flag time, $1,338 raised for Mission 22. Every minute or so, that PayPal link with the QR code is going to pop up in the top right corner of your screen. You can still scan that and donate live through the broadcast. All proceeds go to Mission 22 from this race. These drivers donated all that money. If it was any donation to get you into the race, I can tell you lots of money from lots of drivers. The suggested donation was $10. Lots of drivers more than exceeded that number, obviously. So lots of money raised for an awesome charity on 4th of July weekend.
And Mission 22 does so much fantastic work for veterans, as well as spouses of veterans and other people who also get impacted by the stuff that they go through, both during and when they are out of their service in the military. So, seeing that number be where it's at, and anytime it goes up as a result of what these drivers have put in, the fact that they've gone above and beyond, I think showcases their desire to help veterans in need that really need that help in transitioning from service to civilian life.
Yep. Big shout out, by the way, Tanner Marr, Mark Arthur, Dalton Kilmer, the 3 admins and organizers of this event. Spent numerous hours getting this thing ready, getting all the invites sent out, getting the rules set, and make sure all the drivers are ready, all the pre-race announcements. So thank you to all of them for the work they've done tirelessly as well. Now working lap 33. Remember, we last pitted back on lap 18, a couple caution laps involved. So I suspect probably by lap 48, about 15 laps from now, we could see our next set of pit stops if this stays green. But look at now, Finn, 3 wide now, a lane up top, trying to move around.
Yeah, I see the wiggle there.
Oh, car on the wall.
Yeah, that is going to be the
28. That is M. Brian Matthews, who was up a bunch of spots earlier, up in the wall. Luckily kept it safe, no caution, but now he'll be probably out of the draft.
Yeah, certainly out of the drafts. I wonder if he had planned, just accidentally ran into the bumped the wall there. And that probably has got him a little bit of damage somewhere on it, as well as not being in the draft. So that car looks like it's running a little bit slower, even out of the draft. So as you can see here, we have a quick replay. You see that 28 just kind of drifts up into the wall, bounces off it pretty hard, but keeps it going the right direction. It doesn't slide down or lose control of it, and just rides that wall back to where he can get the car under his feet. And
look at us up top. This is a challenge for the lead. This is Brandon Mettler. He's now taken the lead around here so he can hold it up to the start-finish line. Be another official race of that red, white, and blue machine's now fighting Chris Carroll. Carroll to the bottom, coming to the line. It would be Carroll if that were the race, but it is not, because we're just being a lap 34. But let's see what Mettler can do here. Mettler's got pushers on back. He's got a couple really, I guess, a scheme of patriotic cars. You got the red, white, and blue. You got a darker kind of bluish hue of that. You got the bomber behind him, and then a blue car with white stars behind. So the patriotic line appears to be up top.
That it does seem to be very patriotic up top, and Ben Holland, as well as a bunch of other equally patriotic, I would feel like, maybe not in the red, white, and blue stance, but you have that Marine Corps livery of Mark Arthur also down there, along with some others. So I think both lines have some pretty American or heritage-based liveries, as they're running two different lines here. The middle line now becoming kind of the bottom line, and the top line coming the middle line.
Yep, new leader, by the way, Brandon Mettler, has officially led a lap in the Freedom 100. One of numerous drivers to take that claim tonight here, as we're now starting lap 36. It's Mettler, it is Blevins, it is Scotty Stevens, all clear. They're about to reach a lapped car not too far from now. It's going to be the number 48 car. That is... We'll get a name on that in a second here, but that's from that Jimmy Johnson-inspired Keems. It's the 77 in sim. I called it the 48 because of what it looks like with the old Jimmy Johnson scheme. Sorry, that is Jamie Bernhardt. So Bernhardt says, quote, "I'm holding my line on the bottom." We talked about this earlier, Finn. Every driver has a preference of where they want to be. Every driver has a preference where you want a lapped car to be. We'll see what happens. But, boy, when you're 3 wide like this, I don't know. He said, quote, this real quick, sorry to cut you off, quote, "I'm not going to the apron." Oh, boy. He might not get a choice. He might get shown where the apron is.
That is very possible. We'll have to see how this plays out. I definitely get the feeling the number 77 there has a plan, or that number 48, number 77 disguised as number 48 has a plan. But I think the rest of the pack and herd mentality might dictate something different here as we see them go into turn 3.
So a couple leaders move up top. They'll start to serpentine to the top, or at least the middle lines here. Now, what would happen possibly for this car is he may get sucked into the draft. He may not lose as much speed. There's a little bit of apron action, but still mostly in the bottom lane. Now, what he's hoping for is he's hoping to get kind of sucked into the draft here. He's hoping to find a space in line and kind of not, that's the problem. That's the benefit of staying on the bottom, right? Is right there as a car pulls in front of you, or this car maybe pulls in front of you. Hold on, wrecking up top. Unrelated. Dalton Kilro's involved. This is the car I saw at the last second. There is, I believe, Mark Arthur. There's a car in the bottom.
Of Jason Rushing as well.
Yep.
And that's what instant started. Dalton Kilro getting...
the 9 cars was involved. That's going to be Chris Mackey in that look right there. And so a bunch of cars involved in circle. I'm not sure what the epicenter was. We'll wait for the Green Flag TV replay machine to queue it up and find out here. I'm curious if it involves a checkup due to the lap car being involved, or it's completely separate. Watch to the top of your screen. They get 3 wide. Oh, and someone hooks Mark Arthur up in the wall. That black and blue car.
That's Jason Rushing in that.
That is Jason Rushing.
Yep, of the 78. Tips MacArthur, and that they run into Dalton, and Dalton swings down, catches the 18 at a much different speed, and I believe it also involves.
I mean, kind of bounces off of Kilrow, and then move there. But I mean, what you can say, got to tell you that luckily for him, nothing involving that lapped car. He was not involved in that wreck, and not to blame, no fault of his. So that may have been an interesting conversation if he did. Oh boy, there's a hard hit for Kilrow, and then down through the field he went in front of one of those bomber cars. And
you'll see just outside of that shot, you'll see the number 9, where the number 9 got involved with this with the 43 and the number 9 both avoiding Kilrow, and they both try to get back up onto the field. The speed difference from that number 9 clobbering the number 43. You'll see it here as they go back up off the apron, and that just takes off that front bumper and makes a mess out of the front end with the wall.
Well, here it is again. We got close to green flag pit stops, and once again, the caution comes out. So here we are. Brandon Mettler leading us down. Blevins, Carroll, Stevens, and more coming down pit road. Let's see what happens. Again, full gas. The question is how many tires. They're not that important in Talladega, but I wonder at some point if you take them just because they're available. Here's Mettler on pit road. No lifting of the car, no tires, waits for the gas. Getting ready to pull away here. You see the pit road times on the right side of your screen. Let's see who wins the race off of pit road. I believe it is going to be Mettler right there.
Not far behind Chris Carroll and Scotty Stevens being the top three. Whole host of other drivers getting done underway now. Not a lot of tire changes I saw this time by. A couple sets of 2 from what I saw. I got done same time fuel got finished.
Yep. Well, you know what, Finn, as we ride around under caution, let's do this. So let's take a second and step back and let's learn a little bit about Mission 22. You're not going to miss anything. We're under yellow here in the Freedom 100. Let's go side by side and learn a little bit about Mission 22.
1, 2, 3. I love it, Molly.
They say it's a matter of time, 1,000 days and the sun won't shine before I come back to you. For your love I will go far, I wanna be wherever you are. I know I'm coming back for you.
Brother, it's good to see you.
My love is a river long, the best ride in a million wrongs. I know I'm coming back to you. And I'm happy, nothing's going to stop me. Happy, nothing's going to stop me. I'm making my way home. I'm making my way.
There's a look at Mission 22. Once again, the charity we're supporting with the Freedom 100. Scan that QR code right there and donate. As I said, over $1,300 raise pre-race. Hoping we can increase that number as the broadcast goes on. We'll see if we can get a final number before we go off the air tonight of what's being donated to Mission 22. But helping veterans with mental health and an important topic. You know, Finn, obviously Mission 22 is the purpose tonight. But I mean, whether you're a veteran or not a veteran, mental health, often a topic not discussed, right? And a very important topic for everyone to focus on and take care of. So again, thank you to these drivers for supporting Mission 22.
Yeah, it could not be a bigger talking point, especially in a lot of communities, that it should be more of one than it gets the focus it deserves, especially with veteran communities as well as communities all across this, including iRacing communities and things that everyone goes through these things at one point or another, and the stigma that still kind of surrounds it, regardless of your kind of upbringing, is, I think, a big part of what Mission 22 is there to fight for, as well as, you know, remove the amount of time they have for treatment.
I would agree. Well, here it is. The pace car is down for the third time tonight. For the first time now, Brandon Mettler is the control car. Waits to get inside that blue Geico restart zone. Has Chris Carroll to the outside. It is green flag racing at Talladega. They both step on the loud pedal. Big push from the 2 car. Puts Mettler way out front. Now, Mettler, of course, at a super speed. This is maybe not the look you want. Well, nobody's got help behind now. If you get stuck too far out front alone, you could be a sitting duck. But look at the cars. 1, 2, 3 cars already moving to the top. That's now Mettler, Stevens, and Carroll quickly finding the top lane, Finn.
Yeah, they clearly are finding the top lane. Not far behind them, though, as well as Tom Freitas. and Paul Zatmary, excuse me. And they kind of single file for the top about 5 or so, and then they get into 2 lines of low and high. Ben Holland still championing that low line, as well as many other drivers looking to try to bring that group back into contention.
So we'll see what happens to the bottom lane here. Of course, Ben Holland still on the bottom. Got a couple cars in front of him this time. A couple cars to push. We'll see if he can make that happen. There's some couple cars thinking about it. The 23 thought about moving to the bottom, so did a couple others, but everyone stayed in the lane. Now the 23 moves down. Now the 23 wants to lead that bottom lane.
Yeah, Steven Linger looking to keep championing that bottom lane. Get a little bit of help from the number 47 and Brian Koch behind him. And we'll see how well that goes. The bump draft there. Kind of see where that little jolts forward a little bit, getting alongside Tom Freitas and that 999 off to the right of the screen there. Chris Carroll diving underneath both Brandon Mettler and Scotty Stevens to try to take over the lead of the race.
Now the bottom lane's moving. Steven Linger pushing Carroll around. Will Carroll move back up? That's the question maybe to ask yourself, is what does Carroll do once he's clear? And let's see. Oh, boy, Linger got a little up the... Well, they're 3 wide, actually. That's what happened there. So Carroll went way up top. I missed that from the camera shot.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. Chris Carroll moved up as soon as you said that. We were watching along with Steven Linger, and that got in the way of Brandon Mettler. Chris Carroll inadvertently has fallen down the order as he kind of gets sucked up behind the draft.
Here's the replay of what happened. We were riding on board in the moment, but Carroll went up, maybe went a little too far up and kind of got bumped way up top and then kind of pushed out on. He'll fall in line 3-4 cars back, but that's going to allow for another new leader. It's Steven Linger. He would have led that lap that time, so he'll add his name to the list of drivers who've led a lap here with Boyfin. A lot of times at Talladega, when we're doing 10, 15 to go, we get 3 wide, we get a little touchy, we get a little bumpy, we get a little aggressive. These guys, they're starting a little early.
They're starting a little early, but we're coming up on the halfway mark. We only have 100 laps here. So we are getting to the halfway mark, getting to the part where we're counting down instead of up. And as a result, I get the feeling drivers are starting to get a little bit antsy, trying to figure out where they want to be for that last final sprint at the finish.
He's going to push up top. Look at that. That bomber car connected to the back end of the other car up top. They were making a big run on the outside and trying to make something happen. That's the 24 up top, by the way. That's Paul Satmary. He's being pushed around by the 42 of Kyle Wellman as Satmary up and down the lanes. That makes you nervous because that push is harder to do. They had the 57 behind them and on back through the field. So here we are back to 2 wide racing. Paul Satmary has fallen back to the field. That top lane is kind of disconnecting, maybe backing off. Maybe they got nervous here. Well, here we are, as you said, just about to approach that halfway mark of working lap 46, coming to the end of it to start lap 47 in just a moment. Another car went up top and tried to, oh boy, be on the way almost. That's the 2 car, I believe.
That is Scotty Stevens.
And Scotty Stevens.
Oh.
Well, the 23 is the bottom 4 wide. 3 wide, 4 wide. Oh, they're going to work it out, but it's going to get nervous here.
Oh, that 29 and that 47.
Oh,
not
contact.
really wanting to give up the room there. Contact.
Oh, boy.
Keep it going.
57 gets up in the wall. He gets around back to 3 wide racing. That car now can move up top temporarily. And I think we survived.
So far. We can breathe.
Take a breath.
That 29, that 47 did not want to budge or give up an inch of space in that middle lane.
No. But here's what's happened because of all that chaos back there. People breaking up drafting lanes, people killing momentum. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 or 7 cars long now before you find a 2-wide battle.
Yeah, you see that 2-wide battle of Cody Gibson trying to get alongside Steven Linger for 5th. But that move out of the draft ends up causing Cody Gibson to end up slowing down, pulling the number 24 of Paul Satmary, excuse me. I'm going to keep getting that wrong for some reason. Back into the fight in the 2-wide battles as we get further back down the pack alongside Ben Hallam.
Yeah, Gibson typically runs the Cheetos number 7 and went ahead and traded the Cheetos out for that red, white, and blue patriotic number. And he's kind of hoping someone else maybe would pull up here and help provide that draft. Getting a beautiful push from the back from the 24. And just needs a little bit more help maybe to catch the front of the field. Now, Finn, just like road racing, everyone has a preferred, I guess, style of racing, method of racing. It's no different in super speed. Some people love to be pushed, right? Some people are better pushers. Some people are better at getting pushed. And that can really matter how you drive sometimes, right? Sometimes you want to be up front. It feels like Chris Carroll has wanted to lead all night because maybe he's more comfortable being pushed than pushing. Otherwise, you see other guys who would rather push you to the very end because they think they're better at maybe holding that line and pushing than being pushed themselves.
I think it's one of those things that also goes really hand in hand. In like most skills, you have both ends of it that you utilize at one point or another, and it's a preference thing also, like you said. But I think in order to understand how pushing works, you also have to understand how being pushed works and how to place your car so that way you're an easy target for them to kind of keep an eye on without having too much problem trying to link up for that bump draft on those straights, and how to keep close in the corners so that way that the next time they do it, it's not hard. And so I think it's you have to know a little bit of both, regardless of where you are, whether you're the one being pushed or doing the one doing the pushing. And sometimes you have to work out of your comfort zone.
Yep. I'm going to steal the joke that our producer Dustin Ollis used in the pre-race communication. We got two of those bomber cars up top. If we get them all lined up, do they get like a super boost? Do they get like an area of effect on one another? Do you think? Do they just something happen cool up there? We saw all the patriotic cars linked up. That didn't seem to do anything. Maybe if we get matching paint schemes, we'll see if something happens. But boy, what's happened now is we've gone back to 3-wide racing. We're 3 wide, as deep as the eye can see, and there are cars now stuck in line, nowhere to go but forward, and hoping something good happens. Look, there's a 57 in the middle. You'll see the 23 on the bottom. Wellman's up top. Oh, boy. You see Chris Carroll leading the middle lane. Ben Hollum on the bottom. Cody Gibson wants to lead the race. He moves to the bottom, or to the middle, pardon me. He wants to put his name on that list of race leaders because he has now, at least temporarily, taken the lead.
That he has a great run up from the kind of top line here as we've been driving 3 wide for a while, and has used that opportunity to slide into the middle lane. Number 33, John Perkins, kind of falling down in kind of that gap between the drafts as the top line begins to kind of close down on the middle line. Number 47 looking to try to close the gap, but there's a car there. Number 33 has not disappeared.
Yeah, not clear is the spotter call for that. That was really close, right?
Thankfully, no contact. And that number 47 able to wrangle it back up. 2 lines here, still going. It's always, I think, a little daunting, regardless of whether or not you're the car being turned into the car turning, to have that moment of like, oh shit, there's still a car here. Beans.
Yeah, there really is, right? So you see, by the way, a second ago on the left side of your screen, number of laps led per driver. You see that means the number of drivers who all led a lap. You can count them down the list. Add Cody Gibson to the list. He's going to come around this time. He'll lead his second lap of the night. So you see, I mean, there's a bunch of drivers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at least 77 other drivers. 7 drivers in total have led a lap this evening. And I doubt that list is done, growing just past halfway into Freedom 100. Derrick Watson and Finicini on the call with you. Dustin Ollis pushing all the buttons, making us look and sound good down in the booth. Happier with us on a Sunday night on Green Flag TV, the ARCA cars at Dega, 4th of July Super Speedway Racing. Ben Hollum up to P3, maybe the best we've seen him in. At least tied for the best all night long, I do believe, for Hollum. Boy, I wonder if he would want to move up here. It's we talked about being stubborn to the bottom. Feels like right there up top, that's the run. If he moves up, that middle lane's been so good. He's running out of time to make that decision, though.
He is running out of time. I think while we didn't see it on the broadcast, I think I spotted him out the corner of my eye being in the middle lane more than once. So while we said that he's stubborn, he might not have been stubborn as we believed him to be from what we see him on the broadcast.
3 wide again, Chris Carroll, and what we effectively call the sucker hole, Finn. That's that line you think is going to work, but there's no draft in there. Effectively called the sucker hole in oval super speedway racing. And Chris Carroll just got devoured by. That is our official. Yep, that is what we call it. The sucker
I just
hole.
want to make sure that that's the terminology that if I went over to a NASCAR, aficionado. I went over stop by the pit lane at Daytona 500 next year, and I went, hey, yeah. So, what happens if I'm in between 2 draft packs and I end up falling back? What is that called? And if they look at me and say anything else, I'm gonna have to come back to you and go, "This is not at all what they say," because
Well-
I have to believe it's called something way more, less, way more, I guess, car termy than sucker hole.
I mean, I'm just saying that's the slang for it. There may be a more,
Okay, all right.
appropriate term, but on the broadcast, on Fox and NBC, Dale Jr., Dale Waltrip, all refer to it as the sucker hole. And Chris Carroll felt
right.
it's just because it looks so tempting, right? Hey, I'll move up, I'll get a good run, and all of a sudden there's no one there with you, and you could go from leading a race to really, pretty far back. Carroll kind of got lucky.
Oh.
We've seen drivers fall pretty much back through the field, by not finding a single draft partner in the middle. Meanwhile, Brandon Mettler back to the front of this field is now up on Kyle Wellman, Cody Gibson, and others here. So we're back to two-wide racing. Finn, we keep seeing brief flashes of three-wide racing, but we also see in the bottom of your screen the drivers in contention for the Hard Charger Award. Right now, Cody Gibson plus 17. If the race is over, he would win that award.
That he would. I think we still see him on here, or we will see him here. I think again, Steven Linger, definitely one of the drivers that has had some of the most positions gained overall, depending on where he is on the field. So I think it's still up for grabs. Cody Gibson, I think, currently topping that chart, but I think it's still anybody's game at this point.
Oh, and hey, with the Talladega races, that thing moves lap by lap, minute by minute, second by second. You can go up and down a few spots depending upon a draft line. So we'll wait and see where that all wraps up here. But again, up top, it's Mettler, Wellman, Stevens, your top three. That's Mettler in the red, white, and blue, and then the two old bomber-inspired cars up top. Cody Gibson in that kind of bluish hue, number 7, is leading that bottom lane with the Xbox car of Ben Hollum on back, and see others on back. But I wonder, Finn, there is still some cars hanging back. Look, if we go to the back of the field, back deep for a second, we've really focused on the front. Go back to P26, P27, P28. There's a set of cars, Richard Regan Jr., I believe Stephen Blevins, all hanging back here. These guys are just kind of waiting. These guys, in the case of the 05, you've used your fast repair. You don't have another one. Regan, I believe, is good. He's not used that fast repair. He just kind of is lying in wait. They're not far off of the draft. In fact, if they pushed really hard, they could probably get back out there and catch it as 4 cars. But they're just kind of laying and waiting to see what happens as this race goes on.
I have to imagine they're definitely waiting for the right moment to just stay out, or pick the right moment to not be with that pack when a crash or a wreck occurs towards the end of this race. I know people are going to get more vying for position is going to only happen more and more as we get down these laps with 44 to go.
Yeah, 44 to go. That means we're working lap 56. That means the cars last pitted right around lap 39, lap 40. There's one way to the bottom. That's Ben Hollum, way to the bottom. And he may got bumped out of line. We have to wait and see. He's going to fall back a few spots here behind the 57. And all's good. He's back on the track, back in line. Let's see what happens. You can watch the bottom of your screen, that white, greenish hue. There's a checkup in the bottom, and he gets bumped from behind and did the best thing he could.
Yeah, and it's one of those situations where the drivers there all just trying to manage the moment, checked up to not hit the car in front of him, the car behind him, gets a little bit of love tap there, and that pulls the rear end of that car a little bit further than he wants it to, catches it before it becomes a problem. Riding along with Stephen Linger here, as that bump happens, you see it. It's ever so brief. That's all that car needs to get unsettled and get dragged to the apron. And then, as we see here, Ben Hollum out of the draft just kind of loses of all that pace as that car is actually hitting the wind with no other cars in front of him to kind of buffer it for him.
Yeah, pull back up in front of Dalton Kilroe is where he's getting his push now. But the best news for Hollum, by the way, that bump was flat to the middle of the car. Had that bump been onto the back of Hollum to the left or to the right, it likely would have sent that car spinning one direction or the other. But since it really hit into the back of the car, it was just sort of jolting to Hollum versus actually looping that car around. So good news for him, but bad news because he's now fallen pretty far down through the pack here with 43 to go. I was going to say, by the way, the car's last pitted lap 39. We're working lap 57, so we're coming up on almost 20 laps since our last pit stop. Per our estimates, that means we're probably within the 10-lap window of green flag pit stops. If those do come around, that's when they would likely be. There's Richard Regan Jr., by the way. Said he's had a quiet night. That's not Richard Regan. Sorry, that is a different car. That looked like about Regan's car, but that's not his. That is a number on that car. Oh, that's Ryan Cook, I believe, the 47 on the bottom.
Yes, that is
Now,
Brian Cook. On the 40 bottom
inside there. Ooh, contact with the 57. All's good back there. So it feels like, this is weird to say at a super speedway, Finn, but I feel like it's calmed down a little bit.
Well, now you said something. It's definitely not going to stay calm, but
Right?
I would have to agree. In this brief moment before chaos erupts, as I'm trying to finish the sentence, it is in fact calm.
Makes
No?
you almost want to break out your golf announcer voice, doesn't it?
Just the yes, wonderful, fantastic stuff. Tease it off.
Brandon Mettler to the front of the pack. It's got a nice line. Kyle Wellman, Chris Carroll, Brad Lawson on back through the push. I don't think I can do that. That's not my style of commentating. I'd be a horrible golf commentator. I get kicked out of the course.
Yeah, just imagine also the race announcement style at a golf course, the inverse where they're just somebody's just screaming about some amazing hole in one, like it's not if it's like the final lap here. We can get back to actual racing here. Joshua Holt, I think, is just coming out of pit lane. Speaking of our first green flag pit stops.
And that's way off cycle, by the way. We'll wait and see what happens. I suspect that's way off a cycle. I'm not sure what happened with Holt there, but comes on around. He'll be well off the draft as he comes around, and we'll see just how far back he'll be. So he'll ride around and see what happens. But when you talk about that kind of race car style announcing of golf, all I can think of is like Happy Gilmore in a way,
Mm-hmm. Yep. That is, I think, very reminiscent of Happy Gilmore.
I think Holt may be having some kind of technical problems. Of course, in the virtual world, Finn, we don't have some of the real life problems. You don't have maybe the bad wiring or the whatever parts can go bad. You have the virtual problems, the gremlins. You have the PC problems, the monitor problems, the internet problems, hardware, stuff like that. So that may have been what bit Holt. We'll see if we can get word on that. But now we're back here, 3 wide again. And we're still good on the race. This is closer to the front here.
Yeah, that's Paul Zatmary, the number 24 in the middle of that. Scotty Stevens on the high side, number 29, I believe, of Trevor Harmon. Were in that 3 wide for that brief moment. Scotty Stevens diving beneath, or getting back into that high line from where he was kind of out on his own. Not the place you want to be, regardless of what line you're in, is to be out by yourself, if I've got that right in the oval world.
At least not here. You don't want to be out by yourself when there's no draft and no one to kind of push or pull or what have you. And so I was thinking to myself, of course, super speed racing in NASCAR for the longest time at Daytona, a night race, something that's not possible at Talladega. The local city ordinances, they won't lift them. They will not allow the noise levels that Talladega produces after, I think it's 8:30 p.m. at night, maybe 8 p.m. I forget what the time is, but that's why there's never been a night race here, as fun as it may be. So I was kind of thinking to myself, here we are, 4th of July weekend. And sadly, while there may be fireworks on the track before we're done, no virtual fireworks show after the race.
That is unfortunate, because I think it's one of my favorite things about iRacing Daytona is the virtual fireworks show that happens at the end of the race.
And by the way, if you want to ever be surprised by iRacing, go dirt oval racing. Those guys set up the fireworks before the race. It's pretty weird sitting on the grid. You're like, what is all that noise? Oh, that's the fireworks. Okay. Yep. In the dirt ovals at night, they do them as you're like sitting on for the grid. It's kind of weird to see happen for the first time. Up top here, by the way, this is going to be a couple cars. Nope, only one car trying to make it work. That's the 2 car stuck out by himself for the moment. That is Scotty Stevens. He is praying, begging, hoping for someone to come help. Here's 1 car behind. He'll need more than that. He's going to fall down deep here without a drafting partner.
Yeah, without a drafting partner, the rest of the high line kind of folded in to kind of become this one line of racing cars from Brandon Mettler, all the way back to about, I believe that's Ryan Cook and Jason Rushing. We have a bunch of cars diving into pit lane for green flag pit stops, it looks like, including our leaders.
This is on lap 63. So lots of pit stops happening. So we now can go from 39 to 63. That means we're looking at about 24 to 25 laps of a pit stop. That means right now, if you're working lap 65, we're going to pit again right around lap 90. Where this will not be anyone's final pit stop either under yellow or green flag conditions. You see all the pit stop times on the side of the screen here. 12.9 for Harmon, 12.8 for M. Brian Matthews. Now these guys will coordinate, Finn. They're all in Discord together, as working in as quasi teams for the evening. They'll coordinate those pit stops, how many tires, how much gas, because again, we said you don't want to get stuck out here. Boy, Daniel Jackson, a long stop as Mark Miller. You don't want to get stuck here, right? If you get stuck out here by yourself, you lose your drafting partners. You have a long way around this track. Here's more pit stops.
More pit stops coming in. You do get hung out to dry by yourself. Chris Carroll, basically all the drivers, with the exception of 3 of those drivers that were kind of in that backpack, separate of the main group, are staying out. Steve Loving, Reese Bogue, as well as Richard L. Regan Jr. Are the 3 that chose to stay out for 1 extra lap. So maybe that fuel saving strategy coming into play there from the back half, as well as Chris Carroll going out of the pit box. One of the second round of pit stops under green flag. We'll get back under racing and see where he comes out relative to the rest of the field and those that pitted a lap ago. Excuse me.
Here's more pit stops down. Coming down into pit road, there's Richard Regan coming in. The drivers you noted a second ago. The 27 is going to come in as well, I believe, as the 04, I believe I saw there, and Reese Bogue. These drivers all work together and all race together every Monday night, or excuse me, every Wednesday in the Premier Sim Racing Sim Gaming Expo Truck Series. So these guys all part of Regan Bogue Motorsports, all drive together, all practice together. So no surprise, they're drafting together.
Yeah, no surprise at all. But with these pit stops, it has definitely spread out the field a good margin. All sorts of pit stop times, changing how close they were outside of the pit lane. A lot of varying from 12 seconds to 13 seconds, getting that full fuel load, and a couple tires for some of them. And this field has really gotten spread out as a result.
It really has. So now, here's the thing to keep in mind for a couple of drivers. Maybe if you have Richard Regan, Steve Loving, Reese Bogue, you win a couple more laps than the rest of the field. The benefit for that will be how long is your final pit stop, right? We do it all the time in endurance racing on the roadside. You may not cut off a pit stop, but what if you could shave a second? What if you could shave 2 seconds off your final pit stop? What does that mean for your race? That may be the question that Regan, Bogue, and Loving are asking. We'll wait and see if that plays out here if we stay green. Here's Paul Satmary, by the way. He also wants to lead the lap here in the Freedom 100. He's got the 7 and Cody Gibson behind him. Got Chris Carroll and Scotty Stevens in the 2. This is the front group. They're ahead by about, let's call it 2 seconds over P5 on back. And so now I believe Paul Satmary adds his name to the list of race leaders.
Yeah, Paul Satmary having a fantastic pit stop. Not exactly the fastest pit time specifically of the time spent in the box, but overall that pit lane travel time about equivalent to the rest of the front runners that he's riding along with. So all these drivers kind of the original pack, from the original pack, having the best pit lane travel time. And then both Reese Bogue and Richard Regan Jr. both having fantastic pit lane times, jumping themselves up into P5 and P6 from where they were kind of further back in the field. And
they've got a couple. Sorry.
Oh, yes, you're good. As you go further down the field, the pit lane times get further and further, which is how the field got so spread out.
Yep, so Regan Bogue Motorsports team of Bogue, Loving, and Regan has picked up a couple of drivers. They picked up Freitas in the 999. They've picked up that bomber car on back. So they're a 5-car draft. They're trying their best to make up time. Look at the ticker board in the top left of your screen. That'll indicate how they're doing. There is a car pulling out of lane. That is Steve Loving. He's going to back out of lane and get in the back. He must feel as though he's a better pusher than being pushed. And he's going to hopefully catch on to the end of this draft. He might have just got left behind, Finn.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit close. It depends on whether or not he can catch back up to them in 3 and 4 here. If he can get linked back up here in these corners, he's got the opportunity to stay with them. But otherwise, I think you're correct. It looks like he's hanging on, keeping at least one hand on the group to not let them run away from him.
Yeah, doing a great job and caught back up. So now can they catch this? These are the 2 battles, the 2 groups. These are the 2 groups doing battle. Satmary moved up. This will temporarily kind of put a parachute on the front pack. Now I'd be curious to see if RBM team can catch up here. Satmary goes from front to the back. That puts Cody Gibson up there. But anytime you do anything to disrupt your line, You're killing some speed out of it. There's the gap. That picture tells you 1,000 words. That was the gap between first group and second group. It's now about 2 seconds here, but it feels visually closer than 2 seconds, doesn't it?
It always does, and I feel like especially in ovals, the amount of time you see on track is a lot shorter than what it looks like on paper, and vice versa. You have another 2 seconds back from that second pack to Brad Lawson and a much larger group of cars kind of in the midfield that are also 2 seconds. But, you saw that on that shot for the back straight there just a moment ago. Just cars, small gap, more cars, small gap, more cars. Not 2 seconds.
No, it inevitably, more than likely, if this thing stays green to the end, somehow these guys will all find one another again. And the small gaps now will run and have their fun, but it seems like somehow, inevitably, a bunch of these groups will find one. Look at that big group in the back. If they stay in line, that's a massive drafting lane. If they can stay coordinated, they'll catch these front two packs, and we'll have a big pack. Once again, that pack is being led by a couple drivers here. The 57, not 75. I read it backwards. Brad Lawson, the 57, the 29, and others through that group there. So if they can stay in line, they can stay coordinated. Maybe they're involved in this battle before it's all said and done.
Absolutely. With Austin Norris in that 57, as well as Trevor Harmon in that 29, both of them we've seen do really well as draftees and bump drafting partners for other drivers like Ben Holland, as well as a few other drivers earlier on. So I think they'll pair up decently well with Brad Lawson, hopefully without too much trouble, and they'll be able to bring that nice group of cars from them all the way back to Larry Bell and that number 43 up to the front, coming a small pairings of cars further up the order.
Well, the laps still counting down. 29 laps to go at Talladega. Remember, one more pit stop required. We're not even in that pit window yet. We still think about 24, 25 laps as the big bump to the back end of Cody Gibson comes from Chris Carroll. So we're still a few laps from pit window opening. We come around again. Now 28 to go at Talladega, and we're having a good time. It's Cody Gibson leading the way around, putting more lap sled under his belt, hoping to win this race.
Yeah, I think, like you said, we said at the top of the order, that it is always one that you want to win. And while I think it'll have a much different connotation than what we talk about when we talk about real life Talladega racing and winning there, I think knowing the amount of money raised as well as attention brought to Mission 22 and their cause and their fight to kind of end the kind of process that a lot of veterans as well as their spouses go through, and the effort to seek treatment for the problems they go through, I think will be an equally good thing to keep in the back of their minds if they take home that checkered flag.
An equally great thing, I agree. Something else to keep in the back mind for Reese Bogue, Richard Regan, Steve Loving, and others. This gap is decreasing. 1.5 seconds now the goal that they need to overcome to catch up to the back of that field. Reese Bogue doing a great job being the front car in this pack. He's got Richard Regan Jr. These guys are not only teammates, they're real-life friends. They've worked together at a racetrack on Richard's car before. These guys can almost communicate, Finn, without saying a word sometimes, or saying very little words, because that's just how good of friends they are. That's how long they've been working together.
Absolutely, and you can kind of see how much it shows as that 56 just kind of cruises behind that 04 without, there's not a whole lot of movement there from either party. Reese Bogue sets the pace, and the leader, I think, is coming up on a lap car of that 77.
77, yeah.
48. 77 Masquerade is 48.
It's like a football huddle call. 48 to 77. Hut, just got to get it in there, don't you? It's got to, never really sure what to say there, but he's going to try to pull it out. Unfortunately, probably a little off the draft. Needed to be a little snappier in that call. He will probably, I suspect, fall back to that pack on back here. By the way, Richard Regan would love some redemption at a super speedway, Finn. We did the Great Pride Ride 100 for the Premier Sim Racing group on Wednesday night. Richard had a bad wreck in like the lap 7 from the back of the field. It caused a big wreck, so we would love to get some redemption here. But the 77 is going to get lapped here. He's got to have hoped that they're going to quickly pull down and suck him into this draft here. And I don't know. He needs to move up into that draft. He wants to hold on to anything here. But so far, not the case. But yeah, Richard would love some redemption after that wreck on Wednesday. And look at us getting closer together.
Yeah, less than a second now separating Reese Bogue to the back of Paul Zatmary. And the two groups now kind of forming into one. Scotty Stevens.
That did it. That right there did it. When Scotty Stevens and Satmary broke that draft, they killed the run up front. That's going to allow Bogue and Regan to go up top. Now for the first time this race, RBM wants to lead. They want to get up here. They know it's go time. It's time to make a statement. It's Bogue, Regan, and then the 999 of Freitas up top here at Talladega.
Yeah, they are up top, and they are able to keep it going, but two of them are kind of being left behind as Kyle Wellman and the Tom Freitas and the rest of the party that were hanging out with Reese Bogue and Richard Regan Jr. kind of dipped down to that low line.
And so now what's happening, Finn, this is when I call this the game of live science experiments, right? Now you're taking note as a driver. We all know that drivers have long memories. I've heard about it before from you and the boys. Now you start to take note. Hey, who stuck with me in the draft? Who didn't stick with me in the draft? Who bumped hard? Who didn't bump hard enough? Who's aggressive? Who's not aggressive? And that may determine what you do in about 20 laps from now. And all those things you do is kind of making friends, making enemies, making rivals. And what you do now may affect how much help you get when you need it.
I think that's super true in both oval and road in different
You've never held a grudge before, right?
No. Never.
No.
Me, there's definitely not entire streams floating around there that have my grudges live on air. Absolutely not. But absolutely, I think, to your point, drivers are very good memories of who helps who in the draft, who was kind to who. If you look at more on the road side of things, more of my realm, who was kind when it came to dealing with lap traffic, or who, was very graceful when they, locked it up, let the other person by, didn't try to immediately chop them off, even though they were already having a compromised corner. That respect goes both ways. And I think the individuals there that are like, oh yeah, we stuck with these people, they'll stick with us. Even without the help, Reese Bogue, Richard Regan Jr., now alongside Cody Gibson and Chris Carroll for the lead of this race.
Yeah, Bogue almost there. Wants to lead a lap, put his name on the list of lap leaders. Little tie on the drafting lane. This may cause him a bit of a slowdown. He needs to get down there closer to that field. Bogue, Regan, Loving. The Regan Bogue Motorsports drivers up top here, trying to get on through the field. The bottom, you've got the 7. You've got Scotty Stevens down. You got Chris Carroll down there. Paul Satmary, and then Wellman and Freitas. Now, Regan and all three of them actually, Loving and Bogue, get to the bottom, get back in lane. They'll gain some momentum, and they'll try it again.
Yeah, they don't have to try that again. I think just a little bit of bad luck there, and I think they're kind of biding their time, seeing where they can make that time up. And I'm guessing they're also wondering, we did pit last out of most of the drivers here. How can we use that to our advantage, being back to that pit cycle strategy that we're kind of be coming up to here in about 10 laps time, if not sooner?
Yeah, if not sooner. I'd agree with that here. Remember, we last pitted. Lap 65 was the opening laps we saw. We're working lap 79, so 14 laps ago. So you're right, about 10 laps from now, I would think we would see your next set of pit stops. Here's Cody Gibson, by the way. And then back to P10. That's the new gap from pack to pack, right? So P10 on back is your next gap. That's John Perkins. See him on the screen right there. This is that second group there. Now, about 8.5 seconds back. That's Perkins. That's Kilroe. That's Larry Bell in the 43. There's the 4 car you see back there. Many of those cars, and there's Brad Lawson back there. The 57 Austin Norris. This is a long line. Now, Finn, there is a thing such as too long of a line in drafting, because what happens is towards the back of that field, it's hard to keep in the throttle and not have checkups and not have wiggles and not have in the small serpentines of that line. Every time you do, you kind of kill this run. So I'm almost concerned, is this line too long to be an effective drafting line?
Well, you kind of see with the gap between John Perkins and the end of that front pack, Steve Lovins at that number 27, the 7-second gap, or 8.6, sorry, second gap, which has not gotten any smaller, which was closer to a 3-second gap before when Brad Lawson was leading that kind of pack that we're following along with now. It doesn't seem like it's getting any faster, at least.
Nope. But the gap is closing, looking down to 7.5 seconds. So this group has done something right. Dalton, Kilroe, one of the, that's the difference between 9th and 10th now. As I see here between Loving and Perkins, and that's sort of the more important number because that's the gap they need to close to get back into the draft, right? If you get to 11, pardon me, then you're in the draft. If you get to 6.5 seconds ahead, so if you get to 1 second of Steve Loving, you're in the draft. That's what they got to worry about. Dalton Kilroy wants to push here, but again, don't push too hard because everyone has a pit stop left. This is the money stop. Don't speed. Don't do anything silly. Don't mess up your pit stop because this one could matter when all is said and done.
Yeah, it's going to be the one that's important for everyone not to speed on pit lane either. Well, it's kind of a simple thing. I've seen drivers make easier mistakes when it comes down to the wire. The pressure's on. You're worried more about the big picture things and not the small stuff. So I think that'll matter just as much as the draft and how fast they're pushing.
Well, in a race that once felt like it could never get out of a 3-wide race, it's anything but right now. It's basically single file as far as the eye can see. Different packs trying to catch one another. And you see just different drafting lines trying to make up time. There's a look on your screen between the front and the second pack. There's Cody Gibson leading around. It's Cody Gibson, Chris Carroll, Scott Stevens, Paul Satmar in your top 4. It's Kyle Wellman back there in P5. And even in his front row, Finn, once we get probably past our final pit stops, I think this whole laying back and waiting thing will come to an abrupt end. Right now, everyone's just kind of patient. We know we have a pit stop left. Why push right now? But when we get down to, roughly 10 to go, 9 to go at Dega, the gloves will come off.
I think they certainly will. One of those things I do remember, leaning back on my younger times when I actually was following NASCAR a little bit more with my family growing up. I always remember the green white checker, the last 10, 15 laps were a vastly different experience than the entire race before it. So I think when we get down to that final 10 to go and the final round of green flag pit stops, or if we have a caution, that last pit stop, because I think anywhere from here to the end in pit stops is you'll be safe, but you don't want to pit outside and lose any sort of draft you can get here. I think we'll see a much different race.
Yep, the pace will pick up, the intensity will pick up, the patience will decrease.
We have some pit stops. Reese Bogue, Richard Regan Jr., Steve Loving, the trio we kind of saw on their own earlier on, further back, diving into pit lane now.
And they've kind of flipped this, Finn. They went from pitting last the first time to pitting first the last time. So a very interesting strategy for these 3 drivers here, working together. Again, all members of Premier Sim Racing Sim Gaming Expo Truck Series. They have this Wednesday off, and they'll be back in 2 weeks' time at Gateway at Worldwide Technology Raceway. They follow the official NASCAR C fixed or C open schedule, so they're going to miss Mid-Ohio, Finn. They've taken this week off for kind of a late holiday break, and I know that breaks your heart to hear they're not racing at Mid-Ohio.
That breaks my heart. I was literally there today for IndyCar. How dare they not go to Mid-Ohio, arguably one of the hardest tracks in anything that doesn't have downforest.
Well,
like
2 weeks ago, they went to Lime Rock.
Ooh, okay, yeah, that was. I had, out of the options, I think you picked the worst one of those two to have off instead of going to Lime.
Yeah,
I think you should have gone to Ohio.
Yeah, they went to Lime Rock a couple weeks ago. They will not race Mid-Ohio. They will go to the Glen in a few weeks, so there'll be 2 road courses on their 10-week schedule. Here's more pit stops, by the way. Stephen Blevins now down pit road. That number 51 car as well, also down pit road. And our final pit stops for gas appear to be underway. There's a wreck, or at least a big smoke in the back. That's Ben Hollum.
Yes, Ben Hollum making sure that he doesn't go speeding into pit lane at the cost of maybe some of his tires. But keeps that car from going over the pit lane speed limit by bringing it to a screeching halt.
And what will unfortunately be a cost him is he'll probably lose this small draft pack he came in with, I would suspect. Oof. Just lock it up. I mean, hey, way early, too. That yellow cone is where the time counted. He didn't want to make it close, I guess. So see a couple pit stop times right side of your screen. Mark Miller, a full pit stop by 14.8 seconds. Much different. We'll see how that pans out and what happens up front now, by the way. At least for the moment, the 7 is still leading around. There's another, that's Joshua Holt, I believe, coming in again. Brian Matthews in the 28 coming in again. So both those cards. Again, started to say, though, Cody Gibson still leads for now. Chris Carroll, Scott Stevens, Paul Satmary still in this front group. They need to pit sometime soon. They last pitted on lap 65. We're now on 86. We're 21 laps in. Not this time by. They're going to ride it on around once again. And 2 wide racing is starting to slowly form here. There's your second pack. That is John Perkins on back. Brian Matthews, black flagged, likely for speeding on pit road. That likely all but ends his hopes of winning the Freedom 100.
I would have to imagine that definitely looked like he did get going a little too quick before getting out of the green, getting past the green cones that are the end of the speed limit there on pit road. So he'll probably see him come back into pit road. And I think, yeah, his day of trying to get to a good either podium finish or win is over.
Dalton Kilrow on the driver's radio, as is the 88 of James Efall. Brad Lawson trying to coordinate their pit stops. We'll see if they're going to be this time by. Here's the front pack. They're pitting this time by. There's Cody Gibson. There's
number
more
42
smoke in the back. Someone's spinning around.
Oh, yeah, that was going to be the 40.
And
42
Wellman
of
is upset.
Yeah, Kyle Wellman knocked out about 5-6 cars, and the rest of the field trying to make sure they don't crash going into the pit lane here.
This is going to have a massive impact on whatever's going to happen in this race, because a bunch of cars had to check up right there. There's more cars down pit road as well. I think I saw Dalton Kilrow on pit road right here. Yeah, there he's on the top of your scoring. Trevor Harmon, Chris Mackey. So this is going Cody Gibson, black flagged, by the way, likely speeding, whatever's involved in that wreck, or separately. This is going to shake up the top of this field. Let's wait and see what happens here. Chris Carroll still being scored your race leader. But that gap right there, that's not good news, Finn. This is super speed racing is different. That gap right there means a big draft's going to catch him. But hold on, watch this. Here's the 42 in the middle, that bomber car. It's rear.
Locked it. Yep, locks it up and and then
into the 999, into that red, white, and blue car.
Yep. Tom Friedis getting wrapped up in that, and then all these other cars trying to check up to not hit the stranded cars at number 15. Getting involved in that. Brendan Mettler as well, trying to get that car going back the right direction, and ends up way down the order from where he was.
Cody Gibson's going to pit here. He has a penalty he has to serve, and he's coming in kind of hot. Want to make sure you get that down to speed, Cody Gibson. He does. Wow, what a moment there. I told you those last pit stops would be important. They would decide the race, and I think they have in some ways, at least for some drivers who have some damage now. We'll wait and see what happens. This is a 2-car race for the moment. It's Carroll and Scotty Stevens up here. But then you got Bogue, Regan, Loving about 2 seconds back. It's 3 cars and now 4 cars versus 2. It won't probably be long before I would say this becomes one pack again.
Yeah. This is that incident with Kyle Wellman that started off a bunch of cars getting all out of sorts. Brandon Mettler.
Woo!
And checking up to not hit each other,
That
tipping
was
a few other cars.
Oh boy, yep, there's a hit. The 05, by the way, he really drifted that car in there, but a good job for him. He got that car checked up in time and was good to go. But and that's going to affect a lot of people. And remember, since that was below the white line there on the track that is off the racing surface, no caution by iRacing for that moment because it's deemed to be not on the racing surface. So no caution. We'll stay green here. 10 laps to go at Talladega. And here, watch this again. Watch this drift here, Finn.
It's so good. You see him just slot in to where he's not ideally hitting too much of that number 18. Yeah, small tap there, but a great way to catch the car and keep the car from going into another car the chaos that had broken loose at pit entry.
Yeah, that 05 Thomas Stevens. The 18 he hit was Daniel Jackson. And Cody Gibson still serving that black flag, but that must have been a long penalty he had because that is still sitting there. So either it's a separate one or a separate one. Or excuse me, it's a separate. That's right again. It's either a separate one or a very long first one. That's what I was trying to say. I said the same thing twice for him. So unfortunately for him, that'll probably end that day here for him at Talladega. So it's Carroll, Stevens, Bogue, Regan. This is getting close now. RBM waited to pick the moment, and Finn with 9 to go, they're now moving to the front.
They are moving to the front, and I get the feeling that it's going to be 2 draft battles of 3 with a lap car leading the low line. So you have 5 cars on the lead lap, 1 lapped car at the lead of the low line, which may cause Chris Carroll and Scotty Stevens to try to abandon ship and get up to the high line as quick as possible, get around him.
Yep, that is Mark Miller in the 8. We talked about him earlier. He was trying to get a lap back, was trying to find a lucky dog award somewhere in his cautions, never found it. As of the moment, is now scored 2 laps down as Reese Bogue is on a round. Now it's Bogue, what has sort of a human pick, a human chicane, if you will, in racing terms, has that lap car between him and the rest of the field. It's now Loving is back there, Wellman's back there. And so that's not the 8th car. Sorry, that looked kind of dark from the front view. That's Richard Regan behind him. I thought they had put the 8 between them, but no, that's Richard Regan's. Now it's RBM 1, 2, 3 at Talladega.
Yeah, Scotty Stevens and Chris Carroll not far behind, also not wanting to be left behind.
Whoa, that car has teeth.
Yeah, the car's always had teeth.
I mean, I'm sure it didn't grow during the race, but I just never noticed on the paint scheme that car had a literal grill, if you will, to borrow the term the kids use.
It does indeed.
I don't know if the kids still say grill. I'm not sure. And,
if you usually put metal in your teeth, that is when it's called a grill.
A grill? Okay.
Yeah. At least that's what I know it to be. Whether or not that's still the case in real life, who knows? That kind of teeth on the front of the car is very classic World War II era planes, like we have for that paint scheme in most of those.
Well, the car with the teeth, the 2 car, trying to make a run, trying to see if he can take a bite out of the competition, see if he can get up here and chomp his way to the lead, getting a big push from Chris Carroll, the 97, trying to make the outside work for a lane that worked early in the race. Now, for the moment, they appear to have a harder time. Richard Regan moves up, so does Reese Bogue, and now the 2 moves further up the track. Now they've broken the draft lane. Now Chris Carroll spins Richard Regan, and no caution yet. Regan into the grass.
Catches it.
Oh, my gosh.
He catches it before it goes into the wall, uses the grass to get that car going in the right direction.
Watch this again here.
He just gets
I don't know. That's going to be tight to say what happened there because...
yeah. It almost looks like there's a little bit of a look to go back.
That's Dalton Kilrow. This is a smoking car. That looks like he blew an engine. That looks like maybe he was pushing too hard in the draft. And watch this here.
Oop,
there it is.
See the smoke. Yeah.
That... Wow, I mean, he was out of lane when that happened. Typically, that happens when you're right tucked up next to someone. So it's either going to be that it was one of either that motor just gave up and he didn't get a lane in time, or he money shifted.
I mean, I don't know why he would be shifting in.
Well, neither does he. Yeah, I don't know.
I would say I don't think it was a money shift because my guess is you don't shift a whole lot when you're out on the racing surface in these cars. To my knowledge, I'm not the most well-versed oval driver.
Watch it again.
We'll watch that RPM on that engine just, I think, drop here. Yep. You see it start to chug, and then it just starts rapidly declining as that engine.
Yeah, you're right. No shift. He just gave up. That's a very interesting tip. I mean, he just means he waited too long to get out of lane because if you sit behind someone too long, you don't get the clean air that car needs, and it will eventually blow up. So Dalton Kilroy's night's going to end about 10 laps early. Now up front, look at this. Now you have the 2 Scotty Stevens in between 2 RBM drivers. Now you got RBM, Scotty Stevens, RBM, and then Chris Carroll. So very interesting notes here. Mark Miller in the 8 is now still involved up here in the front, by the way. He said he's going to push Chris Carroll. So let's see when this becomes about a 4. Now 3.5 laps to go. Dalton Kilroy, you see on the top of your screen on pit road. And Scotty Stevens is kind of testing the waters. The problem he has, and whether he knows it or not, he's stuck between 2 teammates. It's almost impossible to get the 27 to abandon the 04, I think.
Yeah, it's going to probably be very hard for the 27 to abandon the 04. I think it's going to be harder still for the 2 of them to link up again, depending on how that all shakes down. And with that speed that they've got, if they can get back in that fight for the top 3.
Well, never mind about that, because that was a massive push from Chris Carroll. That put Scotty Stevens up to the lead. That put a new leader on the board. And they went around Reese Bogue like he was standing still. Up ahead, a couple of other cars. Lap traffic possibly in the way in the next 2.5 laps. We'll see what happens. the bottom of your screen, the Hard Charger Award. Larry Bell currently winning up 25 spots on the night. That's a massive number here at Talladega. But now let's see what happens. We're now come around to 2 to go at the line. One car possibly in the way. That, I believe, is the 24 of Paul Satmary. He's going to move to the top of the track. He will not play a factor.
No, he's going to stay out of the way, doing kind of the more gracious blue flag thing to keep the cars battling for the lead. He's not a part of that fight anymore. He got really unlucky in that pit cycle towards the end there and kind of left out by his own.
2 to go this time by last lap where the yellow flag can come out. If we get back to the line, all bets are off. No cautions happen on the white flag in this race. Another push up top. And a car went up top thinking he was going to get some help. Did not get it. That was the 8 car. So he may decide he doesn't want to be a part of this battle. He doesn't want to affect this race battle. He's going to pull back closer to Paul Satmary. 4 cars for 1 chance to win. It's the white flag sponsored by the Blazing Pedals League at the Freedom 100. Right now, it's a 4-car battle, 4 lead lap cars. Stevens, Carroll, Bogue, and Loving. Bogue and Loving back together. Bogue moves up top. Loving does not yet. Satmary moves up. Steven Loving's trying, doesn't think he's clear. There he is. Now he's clear. Now the block. Now the block for Stevens. Now Carroll's out there alone. Now Bogue to the bottom. Bogue with the crossover. This looks good. Now Loving behind him. Teammates working together. Scotty Stevens may be a man on island all alone.
Chris Carroll's trying to come to his defense. He is
Chris
able to give him a little bit
the big push with the wiggle. Coming around turn 4 for the final time. RBM on the bottom. Stevens and Carroll up top. Bogue tries to block. They make contact in the wall. 4 wide, 5 wide. And it's going to be Carroll winning the Freedom 100.
Not the way I think any of them wanted that to end. Reese Bogue coming home in 3rd as a result.
More cars crossing the line back here. See him come on through, but you're right, not the way maybe some drivers wanted at the end. A couple of blocks at the end trying to preserve their own race. Unfortunately, puts them in the wall here.
Yeah. Late race contact. Unfortunate end. Talk about recovery drives in the middle of all of this that we've been talking about. Chris Mackey started 20th, got involved in an accident early on, ends up in 7th. Just behind Larry Bell, our hard charger.
Let's watch the replay. There's Bogue moving up, trying to block off Stevens, made the contact, put him in the wall. Bogue then got hit, or then made contact for him at the 8.
Yeah.
And then that was it. Bogue's still going to finish P3 on the day. But, wow. What an ending. Well, here is your race winner. Congrats to Chris Carroll. Wins the Freedom 100. I was watching him burn it down. He's going to go ahead and burn it down. Here is Chris Carroll at Talladega. Does it down there. A little easier to do when you're using the banking at the transition point. You'll see a couple cars going to come out here and maybe celebrate with him. Just kind of celebrating the mood and the moment as drivers wrap up this race at Talladega. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at tonight's unofficial results as we see who crossed the line in what order here at Talladega. Chris Carroll comes home your race winner, beating Steve Loving by about 0.2 of a second. Reese Bogue comes in 3rd after that late race contact, as Scotty Stevens in 4th. Larry Bell in P5, 10 seconds back. And then Kyle Wellman, Chris Mackey, Richard Regan Jr., Tanner Marr, and John Perkins round out your top 10, Finn.
Top 10 in 11th is going to be Tom Friedis. A fantastic recovery there from that incident in the pit lane towards the end of the race. Brad Lawson in 12th. Trevor Harmon in 13th. Austin Norris in 14th. Stephen Blevins in 15th. And then it's Stephen Linger, Mark Arthur, Mark Arthur, Ben Holland, Brian Koch, and Paul Zatmary for rounding out your top 20.
These cars all 1 or more laps down at this point. Jason Rushing 1 lap down, P21. Daniel Jackson 22. Brandon Mettler P23. And Mark Miller and Brian Matthews round out your top 25. Jamie Bernhardt, Joshua Holtz, Thomas Stevens, Dalton Kilroe, and Cody Gibson round out your top 30. And the last car on the grid, James Efall 14 laps down. That's a look at your top to bottom at tonight's unofficial results as we begin tonight's post-race show sponsored by Harman Motor Sports. Well, let's go ahead and see if we can catch a word here with tonight's race. We'll cue him up here in the room when he's available and see if we can get a word with Chris Carroll. Not available yet, maybe still doing a little celebrating. So let's go backwards in the order. We'll do tonight a little different since I don't see Chris Carroll available. We'll start with the driver who finished P3. At one point looked to be P1. Reese Bogue, you came that close to winning the Freedom 100.
Yeah, you know, for not even really knowing I was doing this race until about noon today, it wasn't too bad of a show. Just try to work together with my Guardian Autosports teammates and PSR buddies, Steve there and Rich, and we're close. Just at the end there when whatever happened there with Rich, he got turned, and then I'm not sure who that lap car was kind of up there with us. He ended up helping the other guys there, so definitely did help me and Steve right there at the end. But you know, it was a good race. Just want to thank you guys for all putting this on, and yeah, not a bad night for P3. Finally have some luck here at these places.
Yeah, of course, you maybe have not always had the best of luck at super speedways, but kind of pulled it out tonight. Was there anything about tonight's race that kind of surprised you? Would it be the trends or the separation of the field? Anything that kind of caught you off guard? Yeah,
honestly, like how you could kind of get 3 or 4 cars together that really knew what they're doing and knew how to work together and like suck up to a pack. Like I said, like me, Rich, and Steve there, we were just 3 cars for probably about a quarter or third of the race, just kind of ourselves, and we run down a couple packs and we're able to get around them pretty quickly and kind of pull away sometimes from like a main pack or pit together and get off good. So just the fact that you could take 3 cars and kind of do a 3-car tandem and gain so much time or get so much of a run, but also the side draft. Side draft here tonight was real big, and that's where you could see the outside line kind of hanging on or pulling away a little bit from the bottom. It's just the side draft knees is so big, and you can't really get too confident on pushes in the middle of the corner where the side draft is just so big. So it was pretty good, but yeah, just definitely a lot to learn for the Arca Aero model compared to everything else I've done so far on here.
Right off. Well, Reese, well, great job in P3 tonight. Anyone you want to thank or give a shout out to?
Yeah, give a shout to Regan Motorsports, Stint Analyzer, McConaughey Setup Shops, Toyota Gazoo Racing, and everybody else that tuned in tonight for to watch it, and all you guys for putting it on. Thank you very much. All
right, Reese. Well, listen, great job tonight in P3, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, that is Reese Bogue, driver of the 04, finished P3 tonight. And then, Finn, I believe you caught up the driver of the 27, Reese's teammate, Steve Loving.
That I certainly did. Steve Loving coming on P2. I think you expected to be behind Reese Bogue, not in front of Reese Bogue. But talk me through those last couple laps there and the plan, especially once Richard Regan got kind of wrapped out in that.
No, you're right. I was actually expecting to be in front of Reese. That's always my goal.
Okay, all right. Never mind. Let's take it back. You said to be in front of Reese. You ended up there. How do you feel now doing the thing you thought you were doing?
Well, started P1, finished P2. You can't really ask for too much better on super speedway. I was expecting to be a little more of a chaotic mess. This ARCA car is not the easiest to build and manipulate and handle. The side draft is pretty brutal. But yeah, once Rich got turned, that took away our power of 3. We went down to 2, and at that point I was like, I think we're toast, because now it's a 2-on-2 unless the lap cars play a factor, which they did.
That is a fantastic end to it. What was the plan with the power of 3 that you guys were working with? And from the sounds of it, overall, not a bad night. Starting pole and finishing second.
So I felt pretty confident. I think the 3 of us would have been able to the side draft and pull away, side draft pull away. If we would have played the corners and straights correctly, I think we would have overpowered and been able to have a separation. And then the 3 of us would have been able to have a shootout on our own coming off of turn 4. That was kind of the hopes. See how much we could side draft each other and deploy parachutes to see who could be the slowest winner. But you never know what's going to happen until the last lap, and got a little bit chaotic. So I was really just shopping for an open lane, and I just wanted to try to stay on the inside. So if I saw smoke and cars turning, I had some room to be able to jot down to the apron or the grass. It's the big difference with Daytona and Dega is Daytona you can wreck in the tri-oval and finish. In Dega, you wreck in the tri-oval, you don't usually cross the line, so you got to make it through. So usually the safest place to be is down low.
Understood. Well, congrats again on the P2. A fantastic kind of mindset going into that I think it was very helpful. At least yours and Reese's finish there. Maybe yours to a little bit more of an extent. Anyone you want to shout out as we get wrapped up here this evening?
The admin team for doing a great job on hosting for a great cause, Mission 22. I'm a Marine Corps veteran myself, been out about 23 years. So raw, Semper Fi. But thanks to Regan Bogue for the support, and the sponsors and you guys, and obviously Green Flag TV for all the work you do here as well as over at PSR.
Thank you very much, and we hope to see you very soon here over maybe back at PSR in the near future once you guys are back from your hiatus. But that was Steve Loving, our P2 finisher here tonight at Dega.
All right, and now we do it. Now we catch up with our race winner, the man who came away with the victory, the number 97, Chris Carroll. You have won the Freedom 100. How does that feel?
It feels great. A lot of the guys I race with in this community put this race on, and they worked real hard to put it on. Working on it for probably a month now, and wasn't able to get in till today. So I did, but all these guys that worked so hard to put this on, I'm glad to win it for them, and I'm glad we had a good showing for those guys out there. These cars are really hard to drive in the draft, and they're really crazy, some of the runs, and I'm just happy for all the guys that put this on, that we put on a good show for them.
So, sometimes in sports broadcasts, we see those win probability meters, and they kind of change throughout the game, when a touchdown happens or a home run or a three-pointer. And if you had to put a win probability on Chris Carroll's odds of winning Freedom 100 when we took the white flag, what were they at?
About 10%. We had a full team in front of us there, boys. There's 3 boys up there that were working together the whole race. I saw it. I kind of figured it out halfway through that those guys were teammates. And I raced with Scotty in the other league. We're not teammates on here, but I knew it was 3-2, and I knew that they had the moves when they wanted it. And they made the move. They made the right move. And I remember coming off one of the corners thinking, well, I'm in a bad spot here. Probably not going to win, but maybe I can shoot a hole here. And I saw it open up, and I saw those guys start blocking. And sometimes they come to you. I've heard Jimmy Johnson talk about that in these races, where sometimes it comes to you, you don't go get it. And I felt like I was in that spot, and I just thought I had to pick a hole and hope. And I didn't think they'd wreck. They're pretty good drivers. I figured I was in a bad spot there, but I figured the only shot I had was to let them all go at it and hope I could shoot a hole.
Fair enough. Well, listen, great job in this number 97 car, winning Freedom 100. I suspect we'll see you back soon in Blazing Pedals next Sunday night.
Yes, sir, Derrick. Before I go, I would like to thank all the people that put this on, all the people that worked hard to put this on. I would like to thank everybody in the forces out there that give their freedom up to give us our freedom here, and that's what this is all about. This is a race for charity. It's a race for all the people out there in the forces that go what they go through in life to make our freedom happen. So I'd like to thank everybody out there, and I'd like to thank you guys for putting this on.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. I appreciate all the words, and good luck in your future races, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, sir. You too.
Well, that is Chris Carroll, your race winner. And Finn, what a night it's been. For Chris Carroll, it's a victory. It's a victory for Mission 22 with over $1,300 raised, and it's a victory overall and a way to celebrate the men and women who serve our country.
It absolutely is a fantastic finish overall for all the people. Only 2 retirements, I believe, over the course of this race as well. So everybody's still showing the support, even if they are laps down, for the veterans and Mission 22 as a way of giving back to the men and women who have served in the armed forces here.
Well, again, we want to thank Blazing Pedals for helping sponsor and present the coverage here tonight. You'll see Blazing Pedals every Sunday night here on Green Flag TV. Also, Harman Motorsports is there as well, and a few more sponsors, TNN Motorsports, for sponsoring this race. We start out thank yous tonight. I'll start by thanking Finicini for being color commentary tonight, and Dustin Ollis for being the person pushing the buttons down behind the booth. Thank you to the admins, Green Flag TV, for agreeing to air this show. Thank you to all of you for donating, and you can continue to donate as over $1,300 have been raised for Mission 22. Thank you to the men and women who serve this country as we wrap up our Independence Day weekend. Congratulations to Chris Carroll, the winner of the Freedom 100.